Hey everyone, Rebecca here, the Dragon Librarian from Farmington Community Library, and Arloth and I are here today to talk to you about a couple books that we think are just absolutely fantastic. So the last time we actually talked about the top 5 books that I read in 2021, and like I said, I read over 500 books last year. It was really hard, almost impossible honestly, to narrow it down to just 5. So because of that, I thought I'm going to do another segment on the books that I consider to be like honorable mentions. So they're going to be the runners up. So they're also books that I really loved and think are phenomenal. And I want to include in the top 5, but I just couldn't fit them. So we're going to do a whole segment on just these honorable mentions. But like I said, they're just as amazing, and I hope you will give them a try. So this first book, I know I've talked about in an earlier video, so I won't go too much into the storyline, but I'm sure you've heard of it because this is a hell of a book. I'm sorry, I just had to say that. So this is Hell of a Book by Jason Mott. It won the National Book Award for 2021. That's how good this book is, and it deserves it because it's amazing. I went into this book blind, not knowing too much about it, not knowing really that much of what was going on about it. I really wanted to read it, to be honest, in the beginning because it's about a book and it's about an author. And it is, but it's also about so many more things than just that. So it's a book about this African-American author who is on a book tour for his latest book, his new book. And people keep asking him what the book's about, and he isn't really saying. It's also the story of this young boy named Soot, who's growing up in the rural South, and a lot of his family experiences and things that he suffers for down there. It is also the story of this imaginary boy that seems to be following this author around, and nobody seems to hear him or see him but this author. So all of these things are intertwined. How? I can't really say. You're going to have to read this book and experience it for yourself. I will say there is definitely a surreal aspect to this. There are times when I was reading it and I was like, I don't really know exactly what is happening right now, but I am here for it because it is phenomenal. Everybody should read this book. It is absolutely amazing. Hands down one of the best ever, but definitely one of the best of 2021. Hell of a book. It's so good. You just have to read it. So the next one I wasn't expecting a lot from, and it really delivered. And I love when that happens. I love when I start a book that I'm just interested in casually and end up really loving it. That just makes my world. It makes my day so much better. And that book that did this is Olympus, Texas by Stacey Swann. Now, there are a couple different things going on in this book, and I will say if you love mythology, especially Greek mythology, you are going to get a kick out of this book. But you don't have to. You don't have to go into this with a love of that. It's really just a family saga. It's the story of this family in Texas who are a little bit, I want to say dysfunctional. That's probably putting it mildly. So one of the sons in this family named March moved away a few years ago after he was caught having an affair with his brother's wife. Now March is ready to come home, and within a day of being home, somebody has died, and nobody knows who is responsible for it. They're trying to figure it out, and because of March coming back, it has brought to light the mom in this story, whose name is June, her own husband's infidelities. And it's making her question, does she want to stick around? Does she not want to stick around? So this is really a story of a small town. It's a story of a family. But the thing that is really awesome about this book is that it is also the story of, it takes this and puts it in a setting of Greek mythology. And what I mean by that is you will start to recognize, and when this clicked into place for me, it was one of those like moments because it was really cool. So each character in this story, in this family rather, is representative of a Greek god in the Greek pantheon. So we've got Zeus, we've got Hera, we've got Ares. However, I want to say it's Greek mythology. It's technically the Roman pantheon, which is very similar and was based off of Greek mythology. But the reason why I'm saying that is because a good clue is who you're looking for, if you can't figure it out, is the first name or the first letter of each of these characters' names is the same as is of the god that they're based off of. So it's so much fun to read this book with that in mind, and with knowing, okay, I'm reading about this family, this ordinary family in Texas that has their problems, but it's also a parallel to the Greek and Roman gods and all the problems that they had, and it's super dysfunctional. It's amazing. This book is really fantastic. I didn't expect it to engage me as much as it did. If you're looking for a really great contemporary family saga that you can link to, randomly link to mythology, this is it. It's so good. Olympus, Texas. And the last book, I have to be honest, I really wanted to include in the top 5. And there were just a couple others that I couldn't take off that list. But this book won my heart and is going to probably be one of my favorites ever. I'm going to be thinking about it for a while. I'm still thinking about it, and I read it a couple months ago. Still Life by Sarah Winman. I wanted to read this book not even knowing anything about it, because I read a previous book by her called Tin Man that I really loved. And what I loved about it was just written so beautifully, almost like lyrically. Just the prose was just, you felt like you could swim in it. It was so beautiful. So as soon as I saw she had another book out, I immediately wanted to read it. And it's worth it. Now, I do want to say that this book is not a fast-paced book. This book is not full of action. It's not full of intense occurrences, but it is all the more beautiful because of that. So it starts in 1944 in Italy, and this young British soldier named Ulysses comes across the path of this middle-aged art historian named Evelyn. They have this really nice conversation about art and the country, because they're in Italy at the time, that really makes an impression on Ulysses. They go their separate ways. Ulysses goes back to London where he lives, and he eventually is drawn back to Italy. And this is just the story of both of these characters, of Evelyn and Ulysses, and basically their life story and their journeys, and how it basically takes them as two separate people, and they meet for the first time in the beginning of the story, and then at the end they come together again, and all the things that happen in between. And I know that doesn't sound exciting. I'm probably not selling this book as well as I should be, but it doesn't have to be exciting. And not every book has to be this dynamite thriller where things are exploding and there's murder everywhere. Sometimes you just want to read a book that is a beautiful story that's written amazingly, and the characters in this are so well developed. I loved reading about both of them. The other thing I really loved about this book is the description of Italy, because particularly Florence, because Italy is not a place that I normally think about a lot in terms of like places I want to visit. For me, it's definitely Paris, it's Prague, it's London. Florence, Italy isn't usually one of those places that I immediately think of, but I was just drowning in the sensations of that place that this author brought up, for me while I was reading it. It was just so beautifully described. I would say that this city and this country are its own character in this book. If you've been there before, I'm sure you're going to find things about it that you recognize and that you love. And if you haven't been there before, like me, you are going to fall in love with it, like I fell in love with this book. Give it a shot. Like I said, I know it's not fast-paced, but not everything has to be. I love sometimes just a really beautiful, slow book, and I don't want to say slow. It's not slow. It just has its own, steady pace that is just absolutely amazing. And if you're looking for a calm, beautiful book, Still Life by Sarah Winman, and it's just written so beautifully, give it a chance. You're going to love it. And also, look at this cover. I mean, how beautiful is this? There were so many times when I was reading it that I would just actually, in the middle of reading it, just close it and just stare at the cover for a little bit because I love it so much. And you're going to love this parrot too, whose name is Claude. He's a great character in the story as well. So those are my honorable mentions for best books I read in 2021. Like I said, I think they're so amazing, and I hope you will give them a shot. If so, please feel free to come and get them from Farmington Community Library, and also please give this video a like if you enjoyed it. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful rest of the day.